Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Friday, May 5th, 2023. Now if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below, and if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games in Major League Baseball for Friday. First up, it's the Miami Marlins taking on the Chicago Cubs. We're going to see Edward Cabrera and Justin Steele on the mound in this one. This is also going to be the lone afternoon game for Friday's card at 2:20 Eastern start time on MLB Network. Now, both pitchers pitched well in their last games against the opposition. Justin Steele went on April 30th. He pitched a quality start, giving up only 2 earned runs in 6 innings. On the other side, Edward Cabrera went 5 innings against the Cubs. He gave up 2 earned runs, and although he gave up a home run and 5 walks, he also had 12 strikeouts in that game, so he was able to miss a lot of bats. The problem is, Cabrera, we know his control has been off for most of the season. He has 25 walks allowed in 27 innings, so almost a walk per inning. And his last 2 starts, 9 walks in 9 1/3. And yes, he was able to earn a lot of strikeouts in that game against Chicago, but this is a team that overall has done a really good job at limiting those strikeouts. They only have a 20.4% strikeout rate, which is the 6th lowest in baseball this season against those righties. So I don't think Cabrera is going to be able to rely on that strikeout stuff, and if he's giving up the home run ball, giving up those 5 walks, it could be ugly for him on the road here. I trust Justin Steele a little bit more, and the Cubs bullpen as well. Being the home team, I'm going to take the Chicago Cubs on the money line at home. Next up, it's the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to see Chris Bassitt and Rich Hill on the mound in this one. Now, a few weeks ago, I mentioned that the Blue Jays were struggling against lefties to start the season offensively. And, it's always good, though, to check updated information because things that happen in April or the beginning of the season, not going to be the case throughout the year into June, July, August. And the last 2 weeks, the Blue Jays have really improved their numbers against lefties. You look at their numbers, top 5 in team OPS and isolated power against southpaws. Their strikeout percentage only 12.2%, which is lowest in baseball. Pretty high walk percentage as well at 8.2%. So they're certainly improving. It's a small sample size, that's for sure, but they are making those improvements. And you're facing a starter in Rich Hill, who, going into the season, didn't really have the big expectations for him. He's pitched well as of late, but you also got to look at the matchups he's had against the Rockies, the Reds, and the Nationals, 3 teams that really struggle offensively. Even the Rockies at home this season have not been that great against left-handed pitchers. So, Rich Hill's had a pretty easy strength of schedule. This is his toughest matchup in almost a month, and I do think he's going to struggle here. Chris Bassitt on the other side, tough to trust him. He's been very inconsistent this year, walking a lot of batters, giving up the home run ball in bunches at times, giving up sharp contact in general. And the Pirates have been a very strong lineup against right-handed pitchers. I lean towards the Blue Jays in this game. I also like the over in Blue Jays Pirates. In our next game, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to see Lance Lynn and Hunter Green on the mound in this one. Now, I'm looking at this game in the first 5 innings, and I like the under in the first 5. And there's a few reasons why I want to isolate it to the first 5 innings instead of the full game. And, the obvious one is the bullpens for both of these teams. The White Sox bullpen's been one of the worst. The Reds bullpen, not really much better. But the other thing is, Lance Lynn is also notoriously this season had really good starts to games and then has struggled in the 6th or 7th inning in some of these ball games. And we saw that in his last game against the Tampa Bay Rays, where he went 6 innings of no-hit baseball, then goes into the 7th inning and he really struggles. He ends his final line. It looks like he had a bad start, but overall he pitched pretty well. 6 1/3, 4 earned runs, a home run. He had those 10 strikeouts. So, really, he was outstanding, unhittable, no pun intended, in the first 6 innings. Struggled in the later innings of that game, and the final score of that one, 12-3, because the White Sox bullpen came in and did what they've done all season. So I think Lance Lynn, facing a Reds team that's struggled against righties, I think he's going to pitch well, at least in the first 4-5 innings of this ball game. And Hunter Green on the other side, he's pitched well himself, a 2.89 ERA, 40 strikeouts in 28 innings of work, facing a White Sox team that basically from start to finish, or start to now of the season, have struggled against righties. Their strikeout numbers aren't the best, and their team OPS and isolated power numbers are below average by quite a bit as well against those righties. So give me the under in the first 5 between the White Sox and the Reds. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the New York Yankees. We're going to see Johnny Brito and Yanni Chirinos on the mound in this one. Now, I may not be a big fan of Yanni Chirinos' game. The fact that he doesn't strike out a ton of guys does concern me in terms of regression. And the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen also, great ERA, but a pretty high xFIP and Sierra to start the year. I see some regression in that facet of the game. But still, the Tampa Bay Rays have the much better lineup, and Johnny Brito, to me, is somebody I can't really trust either. He's been inconsistent to start this season, only 17 strikeouts in 22 2/3 innings. The Rays have been the best lineup in baseball against righties this year, And, this is a home game for Tampa Bay. We know the Rays really play up when they're playing the Yankees. This is a big rivalry. These teams do not like each other. And right now, it's tough to go against Tampa Bay with the current lineup for the Yankees being so poor, missing Judge, missing Stanton. And, at the bottom of that lineup, guys hitting below 200. I can't trust the Yankees here against the righty. So give me the Tampa Bay Rays on the money line. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Boston Red Sox. We're going to see Chris Sale and Zach Wheeler on the mound in this one. Zach Wheeler's got a good ERA on paper. He's got 41 strikeouts in 32 2/3 innings. However, when you look at the matchups he's had and the teams that he's faced, you'd see he's had a pretty easy schedule so far. Really, his toughest game was his first game of the year. He struggled in that game against the Rangers. 4 1/3 innings, 7 base hits, 5 total runs. 4 of those were earned in a 16-3 Phillies loss. Since then, he's faced some weak lineups and lineups that struggle against right-handed pitchers. Teams like the Reds, the Marlins, the Rockies, the White Sox, and the Astros, a team that's notably struggled against right-handed starters. Wheeler's had it pretty easy, but now you're facing the Boston Red Sox, a team that puts the ball in play almost every single at-bat. In the last 2 weeks, they have the lowest strikeout rate against right-handed pitchers, the best team OPS against righties, and they're top 7 in baseball in isolated power. When you look at the Philadelphia Phillies in the last 2 weeks against lefties, who they're facing Chris Sale here, their team OPS is outside the top 20. So I do think Sale, who pitched really well in his last game, 6 1/3, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, no walks, can pitch well in this game. The Phillies also, in the last 2 weeks, the lowest walk rate against left-handed pitchers in baseball. So I do think the Phillies have the edge in the bullpen, and if this is a close game late, the Phillies could pull away. But I think that the Red Sox do enough damage early on in this game to grab a win and certainly make this play worth it, in terms of the value we're getting on the money line, getting plus money. So give me the Boston Red Sox on the money line on the road. Next up, it's the Colorado Rockies taking on the New York Mets. Antonio Senzatella makes his long-awaited season debut, and Kodai Senga on the mound for the Mets on the other side. And the Mets have been very disappointing as of late, but I still think that they bounce back here and get a run line cover at Citi Field. Kodai Senga's had some control issues, and, his ERA 4.15, not too shabby. I like the fact that he's striking out batters, 32 Ks in 26 innings, but the big thing is he's facing a Rockies team that just struggles so mightily on the road against right-handed pitchers, 26th in baseball in team OPS against righties on the road, 25th in isolated power. Their strikeout rate's pretty high at 26%. It's top 10 highest in the league, and a pretty low walk rate at 7.4%. So, I don't think that the Rockies do much of anything offensively in this game, especially because they have to play a Coors Field game on Thursday afternoon or Thursday night, and, they don't get any days off before going to Citi Field for this game. On the other side, we see the, I mentioned the season debut of Antonio Senzatella. He struggled last year. He struggled in his rehab starts this year in the minor leagues. I don't think he has a very good start here. He's a guy that doesn't really pick up a lot of strikeouts. You're facing a Mets team that doesn't strike out a lot to begin with. I don't like your chances. Give me the New York Mets on the run line, and I would think about laying 2.5 runs as well. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to see Peyton Battenfield for Cleveland and Bailey Ober on the other side for the Twins on the mound. Now, I like the Minnesota Twins in this game. I think their bullpen's really improved this year. I think Bailey Ober is a strong starting pitcher in this rotation. I think the Twins have the big advantage in the starting pitching matchup. Peyton Battenfield, a guy that's already got a pretty steep ERA of 4.67, and he's only has 14 strikeouts and 17 1/3 with 11 walks allowed to go with it. He has given up at least 4 walks in each of his last 2 starts. So because of that, because he gets pretty high pitch counts early on, he has not been able to go too deep into ball games. I think he struggles here. The big thing that would maybe hesitate me a little bit would be the fact that the Guardians just absolutely dominated the Minnesota Twins last year. It was honestly one of the big reasons why the Twins were not able to take that next step last season and, be in the playoff race, because the Twins blew so many leads against the Guardians. They were just, they were their big nemesis, the Guardians were, for Minnesota. The season series was 13-6, but it felt like 19-0. I think the Twins grab a win here, and I like their chances. So give me Minnesota, but man, I remember in those games last year, they were tough to watch. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Atlanta Braves. Dean Kramer and Max Fried are your starters. Now, we know the Orioles have good numbers against lefties overall this season, but like I said, it's important to look at the updated information. And in the last 2 weeks, the Orioles have not been nearly as good against those southpaws. When you look at the numbers in 227 plate appearances, which is actually a pretty healthy sample size, the Orioles are ranked 16th in the league in isolated power against those lefties and 13th in team OPS. So still, right around league average, maybe you could say a little bit above average, but nowhere near the top 5, top 3 numbers we were seeing at the start of 2023. And Max Fried's one of the best lefties in baseball, at least so far, 2-0 with a .45 ERA this season. And Dean Kramer is tough to trust in this game against a really big and bad Atlanta Braves lineup that's, crushing the ball right now. Kramer has given up 9 earned runs and 18 base hits in his last 10 and 2/3 innings. One of those games against a tough lineup in the Red Sox, and one of those games against not so tough lineup in the Detroit Tigers. I think Kramer struggles here. Give me the Atlanta Braves on the run line. Next up, it's the Oakland A's taking on the Kansas City Royals. We're going to see Kyle Muller and Brad Keller on the mound in this one. Now, I'm going to take the over in this game. I expect some high-scoring games in this series overall. Two of the worst bullpens in the American League, especially from Oakland, and two starting pitching groups, and especially in this matchup that I do not trust at all. Brad Keller, I don't know how he's been able to do it, but he's got a sub-4 ERA right now. I don't think it's going to be the case for much longer. He's given up at least 5 walks in each of his last 3 starts, so a ton of base runners and a lot of chances for teams to put up runs in bunches. He doesn't really strike out a lot of guys to begin with, so I think Keller struggles going forward. And Kyle Muller, he's a left-handed pitcher. I don't think he's that bad of a starter in this Oakland A's rotation going forward, but this is a really tough matchup for him. He has issues giving up the long ball, 4 home runs in his last 4 starts, at least 1 in each of his last 4 games. And the Royals' numbers against lefties have actually not been too shabby, especially when you look at the last 2 weeks. Kansas City, team OPS is ranked 9th in the league. So I think that they can get to Muller. I don't trust either of these bullpens. Give me the over in Oakland, Kansas City. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Matthew Boyd and Jordan Montgomery are your starters. I think all the values on the Detroit Tigers in this game. The Cardinals are way overpriced in this one. They've been the most disappointing team in the National League this season, and the Detroit Tigers in the last 2 weeks have crushed lefties. They're top 10 in both team OPS and isolated power against those southpaws. Their strikeout percentage pretty low at 22%. And their walk percentage not too bad at 11% either. So Jordan Montgomery's a solid pitching option on the mound, but the other side, the Cardinals facing a lefty, they're dead last in baseball the last 2 weeks against lefties in team OPS and isolated power, with the 3rd highest strikeout rate to go with it. The Cardinals have been such a disappointing team. They burned a lot of us this season, including me. And I'm going to take the Detroit Tigers plus the 1.5 runs with a sprinkle on the money line in this one. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the Los Angeles Angels. We're going to see Tyler Anderson and Dane Dunning on the mound in this game. Now, the Rangers have hit lefties well as of late, but the Angels are playing really good baseball also as of late. And you're facing a righty here in Dane Dunning, who I don't really trust in this spot. He only has 11 strikeouts in 20 1/3 innings. He's given up 4 earned runs in his last 5 innings of work against the Reds and Yankees, 2 teams that have really struggled against righties lately. And, you have rested Mike Trout, who did not play in the game on Thursday in St. Louis. I think the Angels are the side here. Tyler Anderson's made some improvements in this game. His last start being his best of the season, 6 2/3, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts. Give me the Los Angeles Angels on the money line at home. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Josiah Gray and Merrill Kelly are your starters. Now, I'm big on Merrill Kelly and the Arizona Diamondbacks overall, and they're off to a nice start this season, but Washington Nationals have really been competitive as of late. We saw them took the final 3 games of that series against the Chicago Cubs. They won the series at Citi Field last week against the New York Mets, and they took the series on the road against Minnesota, the Twins, before that. They played competitive in the final game of that series against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and overall, their numbers are improving against right-handed pitchers offensively. Their strikeout percentage is still one of the lowest in baseball, so they put the ball in play and give themselves a chance offensively. And Josiah Gray on the road, sub-2 ERA. In night games, sub-2 ERA. He's been their best pitcher in the rotation this year, and now his strikeout numbers are starting to pick it up after a slow start to the year. He's got 15 strikeouts in his last 12 innings against some solid teams in the New York Mets and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Both wins for the Nationals, 5-0 and 7-2. I'm going to take a shot here with the Nationals on the run line and sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well. Next up, it's the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the San Diego Padres. We're going to see Joe Musgrove and Clayton Kershaw on the mound in this one. It's tough to go against the Dodgers in a game like this where the Dodgers offensively have been red hot. Clayton Kershaw, one of the best starts I've seen in a while from him in his last game against the St. Louis Cardinals. 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, only 2 base hits, no earned runs, and no walks in that game. The Dodgers have won each of the last 4 games that Clayton Kershaw has started in. And Joe Musgrove, you can't really blame him for his last start against the Giants because that was in the Mexico City series. And we know the altitude in that series, it was a 16-11 final score. But even still, before that, against the Diamondbacks in his first normal regular season start, 5 innings, 7 base hits, 3 earned runs, and a home run in that game. The Dodgers are red hot offensively, like I mentioned, against righties, against lefties. So I'm going to take LA here on the road on the money line. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Seattle Mariners. We're going to see Christian Javier and Luis Castillo on the mound in this one. The Houston Astros have been terrible against right-handed pitchers lately. They're 24th in baseball in isolated power, and they're 28th in baseball in team OPS against those righties in the last 2 weeks. Their walk percentage is at 5.4%, which is the third lowest in the league, and they're facing one of the best righties in the American League right now in Luis Castillo, 2-0 with a 1.82 ERA. He pitched well against the Astros last year in the postseason. Didn't face them in the regular season, but in that postseason start, 7 innings, 3 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. A quality start there from Castillo. Javier, solid starting pitcher himself. The Mariners don't really have the best numbers against righties themselves either. And, although Javier had a little bit of issues in his last game against the Phillies, that was a pretty tough matchup for him. I think in this one he pitches well. He's still missing bats, earning those strikeouts. I'm going to take the under with a lean to the Mariners in this one. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the San Francisco Giants, the final game for Friday's card in Major League Baseball. We're going to see Corbin Burnes and Sean Manaea on the mound, and I like the under in the first 5 innings in this one. You got a lefty on the mound for San Francisco facing the Brewers lineup. It's ranked 27th in the league in team OPS against lefties in the last 2 weeks with the 4th highest strikeout rate. I think Manaea pitches well, even though he's had a rough start to the season. At a pitcher-friendly ballpark, I think he could put together a quality outing. On the other side, Corbin Burnes, he's been in really good form as of late. His last 5 starts against some tough teams, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, the Red Sox, the Angels. He has not given up more than 2 earned runs in 4 of those 5 games. So I'm going to take the under in the first 5 innings between San Francisco and Milwaukee. And that's it. Those are the games in baseball for Friday. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.